This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So the Cavs got a big win over the Brooklyn Nets, which is important. But let me tell you, it did not matter. The Cavs won that game. Donovan Mitchell won it because he had the highlight of maybe this half of the season. Like, I don't know. He's had a lot of, like, Donovan Mitchell's provided us a lot of moments this year to the point to where we almost take him for granted. I mean, we don't talk about 71 points enough. It doesn't help that Dame scored 71, but like that happened this year, right? But he started off the game with a mid-court three. Doesn't usually shoot those. Don't know why he shot that shot. It did the Sham God three, which was like, oh, wow. And just when we thought, man, Donovan Mitchell can't give us another highlight, they steal a ball on a fast break, and Yuta Watanabe looks back and says, that's a 6'3" man. I'm 6'9". I got this. It's going to be a layup. And Donovan Mitchell chose violence. He chose absolute violence. I've seen a lot of like really strong Donovan Mitchell dunks. I don't know if he's ever bodied anybody like that because that was a classic 2011 Blake Griffin body.
Yep. And when you're on the other side of one of those, I can't imagine what's running through your head in that moment. Like, it happens and you know it's going to be all over the internet. You're going to get roasted for the next couple of days. It was impressive. And I think it probably shocks opposing players when Donovan does that because of his height, but they forget about his wingspan and the abilities he has because of how long his arms are. And I've watched that clip like 200 times since it happened because it's one of those that you just want to keep watching and keep replaying. And it's just a good reminder of how lucky we are to have Donovan Mitchell because, like you said, he can not only do that, but he'll have, a deep three and all of the different things he has brought to this team that we just haven't had in so many years. That's been so much fun to watch. But that's got to be like a top 3 moment from him for this season. I think it's definitely up there on the list. Other than 71 points, you got to say is 1 because that's just like so impressive. That's got to be up there though, at least like 2 or 3.
Well, he had the free throw game tire in that one too. And
yes, that's so good too. Oh.
So many moments. And what I feel like is the most difficult thing to do is being on an NBA bench, watching that and not having a reaction. Like, that has to be one of the toughest things because you saw it like we saw it. That was incredible. The Nets broadcast, by the way, the NBA, the Nets pay Yes Network to broadcast the games. The Nets owned broadcast, lost their mind. Richard Jefferson, who is the last guy you want on the call when you get dunked on, because Richard Jefferson does not make it easier. Richard Jefferson is not the guy who's going to lie to you like your fans are on Twitter. They're going to be like, oh, well, it's just great that he contested. No, that's stupid. Don't contest. You just gave the home team, you just gave the road team a ton of energy because you put your body in there and just said let him have the 2. It's never a good idea to contest what is surely to be a poster. I don't know who taught people that. Maybe it was Georgetown. That, hey, it's better to get dunked on to get dunked by. No, it's better to get dunked by. Because you know what you can do? You get dunked by. Give me a fast break while you celebrating real quick. Let me get 2 real quick. You get dunked on, the whole game stops. Like, remember when DeAndre Jordan did that to Brandon Knight? And it felt like the refs stopped the game to be like, let me see that on replay real quick. Was that as nasty as it looked?
Yeah.
Like, nah, getting dunked on is never the option. I know people will lie and act like there is some valor in getting dunked on because you went for it. No. No.
It's like a momentum shifter too. At that point, it's like, oh, okay, game over. Cavs win. Like it was a statement moment that it just kind of felt like no matter what happened, we were probably winning that game. And we did make it closer than it needed to be. But in general, we were very clearly the better team in that game, and we're going to win.
Let me tell you, when you're on the bench and somebody on your team gets dunked on, you know what you're not thinking? Hey, man, he contested. We got this. No, you're thinking. Yeah,
no one cares.
You're thinking, it's not our night. We ain't got it tonight.
Nope.
Maybe we'll get them Thursday.
Right. Yep. The other thing about that game too is it made me kind of bummed that we're probably not getting Brooklyn in the round 1 matchup, because I just feel like we'd own them in that. Like it just feels like we are significantly better than them. Although I think we're better than the Knicks, I just think it's going to be a little bit more challenging. So I'm kind of bummed that we're not going to get a little bit of an easier first round.
Yeah, and then again, just getting dunked on.
Yeah.
Richard
like I know
Jefferson.
sometimes people want they're like, no, I want.
Okay. So we've been down on this player in this podcast. I think it's important that when somebody does play above expectation, even if we weren't fans of them early, we highlight them. Karis Levert, certifiably a bucket the last couple of weeks. Do you think this is a result of Caris just being streaky and that he'll be back to his regular ways? Or do you think that this is a player who has been traded around a lot? You know, he's been going from team to team ever since he left Brooklyn. And think about, he left Brooklyn the same time that Jared Allen did. Jared Allen, it feels like he's been here forever. It's kind of hard to imagine him being in Brooklyn, but that's how long Caris has been floating around team to team. Do you think this is more of him just being comfortable, saying, hey, this is where I'm going to be. This is my role. This is where I fit in. I'm not getting traded. I'm comfortable. Let me just hoop. Like, do you think it's a little bit of that or a little bit of the other?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with him getting more comfortable. And when I look back on Caris's season as a whole, the beginning of the season started off kind of weird because there was so many questions about who was going to be the starter at 3. It was just, they were kind of trying out a bunch of different things. Is it going to be Isaac? Is it going to be Caris? Is it going to be Dean? And I feel like for all 3 of them, it kind of got into their head a little bit, trying to figure out who was going to be taking on that role. And I was reading this feature on Caris the other day, and Caris had basically said that, like, at this point in time now, he has just put his mindset in full playoff mode. And I'm like, dang, I really would have loved to see more of this earlier, Caris. But I mean, if he is truly in that mode and this is what we're getting from him, I think this is the ideal Karis Levert that this team needs. I mean, he had 18 points against Brooklyn, and he's been consistently in like the mid-teens, I would say, for most games, which is really all you're asking for, because from our bench players, like, we don't need them to, be knocking down 30 points a night. Like, we've got Donovan and we've got Darius and we got Evan and we got Jared to really take on the larger burden of scoring. So we just need the guys that we do have on the bench for when they are getting minutes to be efficient in those minutes, which we're seeing a lot more from Caris. And it makes me really excited for the playoffs, because I think that is a difference maker in a series. Like, when teams are, defending those top 4 guys really well, and they have come in with a good game plan, if you can have Caris off the bench playing well, that changes things in a series that could be close.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm,
I think I remember that. Yeah, I know.
times is that, like, we forget. It seems like a world ago that this was a Brooklyn team in the playoffs, but when he was in the playoffs with Brooklyn, he was a good player there. It's still hard to imagine Jared Allen not in the Cavs uniform. That's funny.
It feels like he is like a staple of this franchise now. So it is weird to picture him elsewhere, because I feel like he's been here forever at this point.
Well, it's funny too, because, like, this is the fastest they cycled out of the post LeBron era in Cavs history, right? Because that was 2018. By 2021, this was a whole different team, basically.
Totally.
I mean, once what's his name? Colin Sexton went down. This is a completely different team.
Totally.
Because they ended, and they had Rodney Hood. They got rid of, like, Jordan Clarkson, all of the excess pieces of the LeBron era. And then Kevin Love was like the last hook. Is he like the last legit? Well, we forget Jetty's still on the team.
True, Jetty's been around.
Speaking of Jetty's been playing well recently. Yeah. Jetty is an interesting player because Jetty is streaky. Like, I think some people are going, well, hey, he's not been playing tough teams. I don't know how good he is. And it's like with Jetty, I think Jetty could put up 20 against anybody. He could also put up 0 against anybody.
Yes.
Like that's
and he would take like every 3 too when he has 0. Like he's still shooting. He's not shooting.
He kind of reminds me, and this is gonna be a throwback, of like a lesser version of Andre Karolinko. Because like
interesting.
Andre Karolinko used to just get hot out of nowhere. And when he's hot, I mean he's automatic. That's why they called him AK-47. But when he's not, it don't drop. You know what I mean? And that's the thing with Jetty is like if he's hot, he's hot. He does have playoff experience. He was on that 2018 team. He didn't start because LeBron was the 3, and this is when we still envisioned him as a 3. What do you think? Do you think Jetty should get playoff minutes?
I'm struggling with it because look, like he's in the last 4 games, he's been averaging 14 points per game, and the Cavs are plus 42 when he is on the court. And look, they haven't had, like you said, the best opponents. So it is hard to judge sometimes because like everyone has probably a decent plus minus when they're on the court during these games where we're kind of crushing teams. But it is definitely promising to see the way he's playing. And I feel like he could be a spark plug. If we're like struggling with shooting or something, I think there is scenarios where I'd put him in. I'm not sure if I would do like consistent minutes for him where you're game planning that like, oh, in this series, we want to get Jetty like X amount of time. I don't think that necessarily still makes sense just based on how like Caris is playing and some of the other guys that I think will just get minutes before he would. But I think it could be interesting just as a series goes on and you might need a little bit of a spark. He could bring something. The one other thought I had about Jetty as you were talking about the LeBron year that I always forget about is when LeBron left Cleveland, Jetty had the most emotional Instagram post for LeBron I've ever seen. He like was like acting like they were the best of friends for like 20 years. And it just warmed my heart so much. If none of you have seen that, you should go look back at that because it was a really funny moment. I just remember him like, I was like, oh, I didn't know they were that tight.
Did Jetty come over in the Kyrie trade?
Yeah, they weren't together very long. It was short.
Yeah. I think Jetty was a part of the Kyrie trade. I think that was like how he got here. That's funny.
It was like that picture of Jetty standing next, like they were like playing like pickup or something. It was like Kevin Durant, LeBron, like and it was like Jetty. That's kind of like that.
Remember Donovan Mitchell first came here, caught one of them Jetty hot streaks. He's like, I didn't know he was that good of a shooter. I'm like, he's not.
Yeah.
Like,
you just wait.
You'll see.
Slow down, Donovan. Yeah.
You'll see. He don't always shoot like that.
Jetty. Yeah, he goes through phases.
Because look, remember this when they're young and streaky, we think they're flashing. When they're old and streaky, we're like, that's just who he is, right? Like that's why J.R. Smith tripped up so many GMs for so long because J.R. Smith was so like streaky. He would just be the most incredible player you've ever seen. Has his athletic, good slasher, has these hops, can shoot. But then he's J.R. Smith.
I love J.R. Smith, man. That was such a time when he was pretty good for us, I feel like, actually.
He was really good for the Cavs.
Wrote him off and thought maybe he was like on a downtrend. He was, I mean, we had some great moments with him. That was a time.
Instrumental in the third quarter of the game 7 of the NBA Finals. Like you don't win the championship without J.R. Smith. You also do win game 1 in 2018 if you don't have J.R. Smith, right?
That's very true.
That is the gifted curse of J.R. Like J.R. legitimately, one of the reasons the Cavs won a championship is because J.R. Smith. He will also dap up Jason Terry in the middle of a game for no reason. Like this is just the highs and lows of J.R. Smith in there, and Jetty kind of continues the spirit of him in there. But speaking of guys getting hot, we talked about Caris, we talked about Jetty. It would appear in the last 10 game splits that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are heating up. And Darius Garland, I don't know what it was about the game I was watching on Tuesday. But when I saw him play, I saw it. You know what I mean? When people compare him to Chris Paul, it was like, I see it. Like,
Yeah.
he's controlling the floor. He's doing these like weird, stubborn dribbles to get to this little jump shot that he's just automatic with. He could get to the paint. Like, and I was like, oh, because in my head, I've limited Darius Garland as somebody whose potential is like maybe an all-star player, maybe 1 or 2 all-star appearances, you know, closer to a Drew Holiday than a CP3. But then I was watching the game and I was listening to Richard Jefferson talk about why he loves his game. And Darius Garland, much like Kyrie, one of those guys who your favorite player's favorite player, right? Because they do stuff that other players wish they could do. And Darius, he does these things and you're like, oh, we might be underselling the potential of him, right? Now, with Evan, it's easy to not undersell the potential, even though some people still manage to do so, because every time you watch Evan Mobley, and if you watch like the road broadcast of the games on League Pass, it's interesting because there's one moment in the game where they go, wow, that Evan Mobley, he's going to be, I can't believe he did that. And sometimes we're in Cleveland, like we see it every day, we're like, he needs to do it more often, which is true to a point. But I was watching Darius heat up. I was watching Donovan Mitchell heat up. And then I was thinking about Darius Garland. And I was thinking about something Windhurst has said, right? And Windhurst has been on this take, if you listen to his podcast, where he says he likes that the Cavs traded for Donovan Mitchell, but he's worried that they limited themselves into how to improve. Now, I'm saying, like, in truth, there's truth to that, right? The options that the Cavs have to better themselves are not as vast as before they got Donovan Mitchell. They're also not as good without Donovan Mitchell, which is an important piece to that conversation, because last year this was a team that did not make the playoffs. This year this is a team that is probably going to clinch the playoffs with room in the season.
Yep.
So that's a big jump. Not just the playoffs, a home playoff series. So that's a big jump from last year. I mean, they already have won more games than last year. So anybody arguing that point, it's moot. It's not even truthful. But my issue with Windhurst's take, and I said this on this channel, was it undersells Garland and Mobley's ability to get better. And that's what the Cavs aren't going to be wanting to trade for a superstar in a couple of years. They're hoping that 2 superstars are going to develop. Mm-hmm. Am I being overly bullish in those 2 young players by thinking that, or do you think that that's kind of the way to go about it?
No, I don't think you're being overly bullish at all, because first of all, we do forget how young they are in general and how much time they're going to have to develop. 2, I think people forget how amazing it is that Darius and Donovan have worked together so well, so quickly, and how seamlessly that has come together in just one season. Like, how many duos out there take years to finally gel and work together? And there was concern about that coming into the season. Like, is Darius going to have to take some massive step back? He hasn't. He is still producing at the same level he was last season, and we're just getting more with Donovan being out there as well. And I don't think Darius feels slighted at all that he's had to, take a step back in any way. I think he's doing more of what he enjoys doing and what he's really good at on the court. And look, we've talked about this on previous episodes of this, where like the Celtics and how long they took to build to what they are, the Bucks and how long they took to build to what they are, 76ers, so many teams that are good now. It didn't happen overnight. And I think when someone like Windhorst makes those comments, they're not looking at the bigger picture of how long a team building process takes. And look, we've done the hard part, which is getting the star. Like, how many teams are able to actually go out there and get that piece that kind of makes the main core complete. Now we need to continue to build that core, and also over the years make those small moves that can, get another wing or get another bench player that can give you the little extra push you need over the edge. So I'm not as concerned as a lot of people are about what the ceiling could be, because I just don't even think we're close to it. Like, those guys are just going to keep getting better.
I think we also forget how young basketball players are and how long it takes them to develop because of their youth, right? Yeah. If you look at LeBron James, even at year 7 versus the player he became in year 11, you can see he wasn't even close to developed in year 7, right? Like, the jumper wasn't as automatic. He didn't have a good 3-point form at that point. He didn't really have, he relied a lot on athleticism. It took LeBron years to reach his top form. We assume that the NBA kind of works like the NFL, where like by 2-3 years, you are what you are. In the NBA, it takes a while. Giannis didn't make his first team All-NBA team till 2019. He was drafted in 2013. It took 6 years for Giannis, right? Joel Embiid has never made an NBA first team. He was drafted in 2014, didn't make the second team until 2018. Right? Took 4 years for Embiid. Jason Tatum just made his first All-NBA first team in 2022. He was drafted in 2017. That's like 5 years to get to that superstar level. He wasn't even a third team All-NBA performer until 2020. Took 3 years. You don't just walk out the bed in your second or third year in the NBA and become all NBA caliber unless you are one of a kind, right? And even the one of a kind players still aren't even close to their ceiling by their third or fourth year. But we're talking about Evan Mobley and Darius Garland as if they have developed into what they have. They are babies at this point. And I think the most important thing is when you look at those cores, right? Those three teams, Boston, Philly, and Milwaukee, the teams that everybody says we're not as good as, and that's true, right? Like, I don't feel great about our chances in the series with either three of those teams. Those teams have been in the playoffs battling since 2018. They have 5 years of playoff experience on their hand. The Cavs have 0 right now. So the reason you trade for Donovan Mitchell is so you can become a playoff team and get used to that. Get a couple years of that experience in. So it's not Evan Mobley's 6th year, and we're talking about his first playoff chase, right? Yeah. So he could be in his 2nd year playing real playoff series. And look, the playing game is a little bit more like college playoffs. The series, that's a different thing to adjust to, right? Like, I hope the Cavs advance to the 2nd round purely so Evan Mobley can see what it's like to guard Giannis in the playoffs and realize, similar to DeAndre Ayton, who ran into him in NBA Finals, I have to get way stronger in order
and do
to guard
game
him.
after game after game. Like, it's a whole series of game planning, which is, like you said, is so different than the play-in.
Because
just one game.
You can run into Giannis on the second night of a back-to-back and he's on the road and it ain't that hard. And you thinking, this ain't that difficult.
Right.
But let you run into Giannis in a game 6 or a closeout game in the playoffs. You will understand the difference between getting strong and being strong. Evan's getting strong. He will understand it. Like, Michael Jordan is the one everybody wants to talk about with it, where he had to go through the bad boys and he realized he was not big enough to play playoff basketball. Partly because that was his first real 7-game series was against the bad boy Pistons, right? Because back then the first round used to only be 5 games. So getting that experience in 7-game series is so important. Another point to my argument, Chris Paul, who probably was the most ready NBA prospect of his era. Like, when you talk about a guy who was close to what he was pretty early in his career, he was drafted in 2005. I think he made his first All-NBA team in 2008, and it was a first-team All-NBA. That's incredible. 3 years though, incredible, and he was a 1-year player in college, so 2-year player in college. So he was a year older than what they are now. But that's how long it takes these guys to develop. They need experience, they need time, they need this and that, and I can see it with Darius more so than I thought, right? Because you can run into this with you can run into this thought where Darius is just a scorer, and there's a lot of scoring point guards in the NBA that are pretty good. He's much more than that. Now, Donovan Mitchell getting hot is important because this team is just a different team when Donovan Mitchell is playing at that fringe NBA MVP level versus when he's playing at a superstar level. That's a big thing for this team. Do you think the Cavs are because I was worried about them coming off the All-Star break. Do you think they're warming up at the right time?
Yeah, I think especially when you compare to how things went last season, I feel like this is a much better pattern that we're seeing. Not only the starters heating up, but the bench really heating up. And I don't know if it part of it has to do with the level of rest that they've had lately. Whereas earlier on in the season, we constantly were having back-to-backs, these really long road trips that I feel like were pretty exhausting. Towards the end of the season here, I mean, we were saying this before we started recording, it feels like they haven't played at all. Like they had 2 games in the last week. So I don't know if the rest is helping them a little too. But I definitely think this is the right time to be getting hot. I mean, you look at some of the other teams that have started playing worse as the season has gone on. Even like the Celtics, who were, I thought for a while, going to be the clear 1 seed and then kind of started to trickle down a little bit. Those things definitely matter as you have momentum going into that. So we are peaking at the right time.
It's going to be interesting to see what this Cavs team does. We will up with Ab in a couple of weeks as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. Make sure you check out Ab on Twitter at Abby_Mueller_. Check her out on her podcast, Just a Girl from Cleveland. Now, I know Ohio State isn't having the Ohio State men's doesn't have a team in the tournament right now. I think Ohio State's women's is still in the tournament. I think Sweet 16 or Elite 8. So, hopefully they go far. And then also with spring ball is coming up. I was thinking of somebody was talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. and I was like, what that man is about to do to my alma mater is about to be disgusting.
I love Ohio State's had a lot of good receivers. That guy is something special, man. It's going to be a good time. Hopefully I hear the fight song one time. You know what I mean? But we'll see what happens there. If Youngstown does win that, then I don't think Ab's ever doing a podcast with me again. No, you'll never see me again.
I put a big Y back there every time I do it.
My camera will be off the whole time. You won't.
It would be hilarious to be Ohio State's Appalachian State. I mean, it feels like 08. It feels like 08 for the Buckeyes,
no.
It feels like 08. Just saying,
Trash talk starting early. This is months away still, Quincy.
They're worried about what we gonna do with Marvin Harrison Jr. But have you heard of Bryce Oliver? You probably have not.
Have not.
But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Make sure you check out our podcast. She talks about the Browns. Big stuff happening in the Browns world. Cavs, obviously. Guardians are getting to start up here soon as the World Baseball Classic ends. Shout out to Mike Out and all of that. So make sure you check out her podcast. Also, the Browns Digest on SI.com. Follow her. All of her links are in the description and in her Twitter as follows. So make sure you check it out. But for her, I'm Quincy. This is Cavs Attacq. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night.